Hey guys, it's Dominic here with D2D Experts, and I'm here with Christian DeLuca at Ohm Solar in Chico, California. Delighted to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having me as well.
Of course. Right out of the gate, I'm noticing a lot of panels on roofs. I'm driving through the neighborhood. I'm like, wow, we're definitely in California.
Yeah.
Sunshine State for sure.
Yeah.
You're out there selling solar. What is it that differentiates yourself from your competitors?
Yeah, super good question. I mean, first to talk about the level of saturation, I think honestly having an area that's a little bit more saturated is a little bit of a better thing. We've had reps go down to Texas, and I think it's a way worse problem if you go to a neighborhood where there's not much solar at all. Because then they're like, what is this? We've never heard of anybody having it. There's no social proof, right? At least here we have unlimited examples and unlimited installs with social proof. So what helps us differentiate is exactly that. I mean, we can go to almost any neighborhood in this area and we can reference a homeowner that's already worked with us at some point. So we don't view it as saturation, we actually just view it as momentum.
Gotcha. What's the importance of knowing what your competitors are doing? Like, how is that an advantage to you?
I think that's super important, and that's what happens when you work a market day in and day out. A lot of people like the blitz models, I think are great, but the hard part is you're in one market into the next and you never have time to really learn about the competitors or maybe the key advantages that you can have. So I think sometimes that can limit your sales ability. Sometimes people are always looking for the next shiny object, and it's like if you would just stay in the same hood and keep hitting it again and again and again, you build up this momentum that just makes your job so much easier. But knowing what the competitors are doing, to answer your question, is super important. I've gone into homes where I knew exactly what panel type it was going to be, what inverter. I knew maybe that the panels were clipping because the inverter was undersized. So I get to walk in with the most confidence in the world. I mean, that's a huge help.
Yeah. No, that's a great benefit.
Yeah.
I like that. Christian, tell me a story like where you go into a neighborhood and they, out of the gate, they open the door like, oh, you're selling solar? Like, the past 5 guys have been here trying to sell. Like, why do you keep coming? Why,
Yeah.
What would you say to that?
I think
what story do you have?
You just have to have the confidence that like, oh, they have? Okay, that's perfect. That's actually exactly why we're here. Like, and again, that's totally fine. And I always put the blame on myself. And I say, hey, my apologies that I didn't help explain what's going on, but we're doing something completely different. And then at that point, instead of like, you don't understand, we're doing something different, right? All of a sudden their wall goes up. But how many salespeople do you hear apologize on the door? Like, not a lot, right? It's a human thing that all of a sudden they feel like they have to reciprocate or listen to what you're saying when you do apologize. So I always say, I apologize, for not explaining what's going on, but we are doing something a little bit different. Then just hop into what differentiates you. And there's always something that, and again, what differentiates us with one customer may be different for somebody else, right? Maybe this one person has always looked at the loan and they're like, we're not taking a loan out for this because they've had some bad experience. I'm not going to try to convert their religion and their politics and, I'm going to take the easy way and I'm going to go and now we're going to talk about a PPA. But for another homeowner, maybe they're like, oh, we've never want to rent anything in our lives. And I'm like, hey, my apologies, I didn't explain what's going on. But the neighbor that we just helped out over there, super excited about the program because they could own their equipment for no, out-of-pocket costs or no money down, and then kind of pulling back, right? Like, again, but we're not sure if your home is specifically going to qualify. It's a little bit more selective. But yeah, how you're able to differentiate with one customer may be completely different from another.
Right, yeah. Tell me about a time where you've been in an in-home presentation. What are some signs you're looking for? You're like, this is going well, I can tell. And it's not just by them saying yes. Like, what are you looking for that this is leading in the right direction?
Probably just body language, like any conversation, right? I mean, think about if you were talking to a girl or something. If she was on her phone the whole time and she was like leaning forward, like almost to where she was tense, like you would probably be like, okay, well, this date isn't going pretty well, But if they're leaning back, they're not looking at their phone, they're engaged with what you're saying and they're allowing you to speak, then those are typically the signs that are going good. But what a lot of reps miss is that it isn't the homeowner that determines like the mood of the room. You come in and you set the mood. If I'm leaning back like this, like kind of like our conversation now, and I'm comfortable, then you're going to feel comfortable as well. But if
Yeah.
I was sitting here like this, like talking to you, of course you're going to be uncomfortable. Like
Right.
we have our bubbles.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Gosh, trying to think what else I can ask you. This kind of goes hand in hand as far as the saturation of the market. So, a lot of people selling solar out there. One thing Ryan told me on camera is like, you know what differentiates ourselves is me and myself. Right?
Yeah.
Coming to the table. So what would you add to that? Like, what do you say?
Yeah, it's you, and it's also, it is a little bit of like the service you can provide. I think it's actually a decent amount of the service you can provide afterwards, but you can't really tell that story until you have a ton of confidence and conviction, right? So I think what most people mean by that, whether they realize it or not, is that the differentiator in you is your initial approach. Because if your initial approach isn't, the best thing in the world, then it doesn't matter how you can execute on the back end, because they're never going to end up talking to you anyways. So.
Gotcha. In that same vein, like, how do you know, what are you looking for on a really great approach, whether you're teaching your team or it's something that you are doing out?
Yeah, and good initial approach has two things, and that's clarity and repetition. So most of the time when you're on the door or just talking to somebody new for the first time, they don't hear everything that you say. So it needs to be clear, and it needs to be repetitive to a certain degree. Not too repetitive, but to be able to get your message across. And then you want to ask questions, of course, to like engage them. Yeah. But the questions that you ask need to be pointed questions. So for example, like there's two different ways to ask a question, right? A new rep's going to go and say, hey, would you be interested in solar? And what is the homeowner going to say? Probably no. But if you say, hey, I'm sure the only way that you guys would go solar is if you guys could save money month one and then pay no money down to do this, right? I'm leading. It's like an assumptive question. I'm leading them towards the place that I want them to go. Yeah. So making sure that you have assumptive or pointed questions as well.
Gotcha. Nice. Good advice. Cameras are still rolling. Is there anything else you want to say to me or on camera or to the audience?
I would say one of the biggest things when you're first starting in the industry is that your red line or the panels that you're selling or the financing options really don't matter at all. You could have the worst financing options and the worst panels in the world, but if you have great leadership or you have great training content like Door-to-Door University, then that's going to make the biggest difference, because your sales skills have to come first. A lot of times people have, Sam says this, death by business cards, right? They're like, I need the shirt, I need the business cards, I need the shoes, like before they go out and take action. And what matters is like action before anything, because at the end of the day, action removes all doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good stuff. Christian, thank you very much for your time. Really
You're welcome. Of course.